All right, Wolf Blitzer, thank you so much. Great to be with all of you. Happy New Year. I'm Brooke Baldwin. Here's what we're watching and waiting for. Any moment now, we should be hearing from leaders of the armed group who have now officially taken over this federal wildlife building in southeastern Oregon. This is all happening in Harney County at this National Wildlife Refuge. This group of anti-government protesters, they broke in and they've essentially hunkered down and occupied this building after a rally in support of two ranchers Saturday. Now, those ranchers here, we're talking about Dwight and Stephen Hammond, this father-son. They are set to surrender to federal authorities at any moment now to serve time in prison for arson. The father and son were convicted of setting fires which then encroached upon federal land. We should also point out that the Hammonds are distancing themselves from these armed protesters. Still, one group leader tells CNN's Sarah Seidner they are prepared to occupy the federal building for days, for weeks, maybe even years.
We're going to stay here until we have secured the land and the resources back to the people of Harney County and where they can get back to ranching, get back to logging, get back to using these lands without feeling fear and intimidation.
And what about armed resistance? Are you willing to have a gun battle with the federal government?
I hope it does not come to that. I hope that it does not come to that.
But you're willing?
Well, the only reason why that would happen is because they, again, are the aggressors. We are threatening nobody.
Let me bring in my colleague, Paul Verkaman, live there in Oregon. And Paul, I know you know this, but just to let everyone else know, we're watching and waiting for some of these members of this militia group, these armed protesters, to give a news conference. We'll bring that to everyone live. Meantime, talk to me about this non-response response on behalf of law enforcement. What's going on?
Well, if you look around me, there is not a single local, state, or federal law enforcement officer anywhere near here. So it doesn't really constitute a standoff. And in fact, the Fish and Wildlife Service had said that they're going to leave this reserve unoccupied. And what have they occupied? Let's put this in context, Brooke. This is basically a single-story visitor center and a store. And from what we understand, they just walked in without forced entry or found keys, so it wasn't like they broke in. So there is no, as we said, standoff per se, and we're waiting to get clarity from the demonstrators when they come up here in just a short time to address the media and explain just what their strategy is from here on out. They, of course, as you pointed out, splintered off from a protest on Saturday. And I'll tell you, Brooke, in talking to a lot of the townspeople, they're frustrated. They support those ranchers who got in all that hot water with the feds for the arson, but they don't support taking this Mallow Reserve, and they don't like the idea that this has gone so far as to close schools in the area.
Paul Verkaman, we will stay in close contact. Want to hear from some of these folks and find out what it is they want. What are their demands? Well, we'll talk to you shortly. Meantime, let's move along and say this. Today it begins. Today it begins, the official start of the election year, and for the first time in this presidential race, Bill Clinton on the stump today by himself for his wife, Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton. And while he made zero mention of Donald Trump by name, the former president seemed to be responding to Trump, and specifically Trump's plan to temporarily ban Muslims from entering the United States.
The third thing the election's about is how we're going to keep America safe and still keep it America. Preserve our individual liberties and our reputation for being an open country, our belief in diversity, and our understanding that one of our great meal tickets in the next 20 years is going to be there's somebody here from everywhere else.
Mr. Trump, however, has made it clear that he will be using Bill Clinton's name as many times as he would like. Trump explained to Chris Cuomo earlier on New Day today why the 42nd president's past improprieties are fair game with regard to his wife's campaign.
Well, it's very simple. They, during the course of the debate and many other times, she was talking about, she used the word sexist. I'm sexist. And she was using very sort of derogatory terms. I said, how the hell can she do that when she's got one of the great women abusers of all time sitting at her house waiting for her to come home?
Why do you call him one of the great women abusers of all time when in the past you've said that the impeachment process against him didn't make sense? You said Monica Lewinsky didn't make sense.
Chris, as a businessman, I got along with everybody. So it was always important to defend people when it was important for me to get along with the Clintons.
All right, we want to follow up on that in just a second, talk to Jeff Zeleny. But let's go back to Oregon. We're about to hear from some of these protesters, armed protesters who've been hunkering down in this federal building there in Oregon over this whole land dispute and these two ranchers. Let's dip in.
Caring enough to report on these matters, and I hope that we can be informal to you and give you information that will satisfy your needs for now to report. I would like to just give some housekeeping items, and that is many of you have asked us for what is our name, and other than just citizens that care and feel like it's time that we make a stand to protect our human rights, we didn't really know what to say. But we felt that we'd give ourselves a name, at least so that we can be reported that way, and we could be more organized in that effort, and that would be Citizens for Constitutional Freedom. Our purpose, as we have shown, is to restore and defend the Constitution, that each person in this country can be protected by it, and that prosperity can continue. We love our country. We love the people in it. We know that we are struggling to be able to know what to do as a nation, and in many ways we are dividing, and we hope that we can restore those things, and that we can unite as a people in protecting individuals, that we will not forget about how important each person is, and how that person has the right to live here on this earth, and has the right to live in liberty, and has the right to own property, and to be able to reap the fruits of their labors. As many of you may know, this effort, if you will, started by understanding that a ranching family here in Harney County has been put under duress by multiple federal agencies. That those agencies have desired for many years to acquire their ranch, and that the Hammond family have refused to sell it because they want to pass on the ranching heritage to their children and to their grandchildren. And because of that refusal to sell their ranch, these federal agencies began an attack on this family. The Hammond family has experienced their private waters being fenced off by federal agencies even after the state of Oregon ruled that it was their waters. They have been restricted from their private property through the Refuge here, going to their private properties through road closures and fences and gates, even after it was determined that the road was owned by the County of Harney. They have multiple times refused the purchase of it, and because of that have been prosecuted for actions that ranchers have done for over 100 years in this county, and in this valley, and for protecting their private property. And these things are what this is about. That because we have allowed our federal government to step outside the bounds of the Constitution, they have come down upon the people and are prosecuting them now directly. They are coming down into the states and taking over the land and the resources, putting the people into duress, putting the people into poverty, and putting entire counties and entire states into undue obedience. I have asked that Shauna Cox read you what we have titled the Notice Redress of Grievance. And to give you a little background, we have spent several weeks, 2 months to be exact, in petitioning the state and the local county representatives to stand for the Hammonds against these unconstitutional actions. And we have done this through petitions. We have done this through contacts by emails. We know that the sheriff has received thousands of emails. We also know that the county representatives and the state representatives have received thousands of emails, and to no avail, that they have been ignored to the point where they have not even responded back at all. I myself, and along with many other organizations and influential people, have contacted these representatives and the county sheriff, asking them to get involved. And all we have been asking from the very beginning is that they put together an evidential hearing board to look at the evidences, look at the accusations that are set forth, and to look at the abuses that the Hammonds have been experiencing. And they have refused in every case. The Notice Redress of Grievance was our final attempt to get them to act. And this was a legal notice that was delivered to the county sheriff and the county representatives and state representatives. And I'm going to ask Shauna Cox if she'll read this.
Thanks, Ammon.
Who you're with and where you're from, please. Spell your name.
My name is Shauna Cox, S-H-A-W-N-A, last name Cox, C-O-X. And I am just an individual with a patriot, American, in support.
Step up to the mics.
Yes, sorry. The Notice Redress of Grievance. We the people, United Individuals of these States United, Coalition of Western States, Pacific Patriot Network, Bundy Family and Supporters, Oregon Oath Keepers, the Idaho 3%, the Central Oregon Constitutional Guard, the Oregon Tactical, the Oregon Bearded Bastards, the Liberty Watch Washington, Nevada Committee for Full Statehood, Rural Heritage.
All right, we're going to pull away from this, and let me just take 5 good steps back just to try to help everyone understand what exactly is happening here in Oregon. These are different members. Apparently, they have now named themselves. So the group is Citizens for Constitutional Freedom. These are the protesters, armed protesters. There's a whole other conversation I think we're going to have later on, really what we should be calling these people in Oregon who've essentially hunkered down. It's not a standoff against law enforcement, because to have a standoff, you have to have another side. Law enforcement is not there, apparently, on site. But this goes back to an age-old grievance in this part of the country over federal land. And some ranchers feel that these policies are intrusive and overreaching, and this is all back to this father and son who, by the way, will be reporting to prison in the next couple of hours by 5 o'clock Eastern. But it's this huge issue at hand. Let me just bring someone in who can really help us understand this. Kanan Jordan joins me live. Lives in this area, understands these issues, know the father-son ranchers who, by the way, have really distanced themselves from the folks we just saw step in front of that microphone. So, Mr. Jordan, thank you so much for joining me, and you can just sort of help all of us understand what's at stake. But my first question is, who are these people who have, from what I understand, these aren't locals? You know, these are folks who've come from all over the country, not connected directly to what's happening where you live. Who are they?
Well, I don't think a lot of us know. The person that was just on announced a bunch of different names of the militia groups that came. Yeah, they're not from here. There are some people who did march in the rally that are local, and there are some people who support what Ammon Bundy is doing. But I think the majority of the people here are concerned about the Hammond situation. They're sympathetic to it. They feel like the punishment is, worse than the crime. The militia is a different issue. There was a lot of sentiment here that they didn't want them to come. some of the militia members have been here for weeks, and that's made the community pretty nervous because we don't really have a reference for what could come of this other than the Bundy situation, and nobody wants anything like that.
Right, which was not good, and that was just a couple of years ago. But the fact that these militia members, these protesters, they are armed, and the fact that, according to our crews there on the ground, Kanan, there's no law enforcement there. I know apparently the FBI or the federal government is definitely monitoring this, but you living there and not even understanding who these people are, does that worry you?
It worries me to a certain extent. I think it worries a lot of people, perhaps even more. The schools have been closed for this week, and I don't think, I mean, because there's not law enforcement out there, because there's not a lot of news crews out there, we don't really know what's going on. And I can't speak for law enforcement, but I think because it's in such a remote rural area, no one's in imminent danger, so I think they want to take it carefully.
Kanan Jordan, thank you so much. We've got crews on the ground. We'll check in with them to understand what is happening and what the next steps could be. I appreciate you. Let's move on. Next, a possible game changer.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.